All right, pleasant good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the morning briefing here on NoFilter.net, Caffeine TV, the various other platforms that carry the show. That man over there is probably Sergei Bobrovsky's biggest fan, one Mike Lubitz. He was screaming last night via text, all caps, screaming after that first shot went in. And it was, there it is again. You see, he's reverted back to being a jerk off. He's unbelievable. This guy can't stop a watermelon from 3 feet away. And sure enough, the Panthers went on to crush the Edmonton Oilers, literally crush the Edmonton Oilers, 4-1 in the game. Evan Rodriguez, a pickup from the Colorado Avalanche from a year ago, another brilliant acquisition by a guy who may be right now. I mean, I know when you're winning, it's always great, and you think you're as good as your last film. This Bill Zito, though, certainly deserves consideration as the executive of the year in all sports, my friend.
Oh, my God, yeah.
He's really put together something terrific here, and the Florida Panthers now up 2-0 in their quest for their first ever Stanley Cup, 30-some-odd years in existence. What is it, 31, 32? They came in the 93-94 season. Hard to do the math on that when you got like 2 years overlapping. Is it 31? Is it 32 years? But nonetheless, been to the Stanley Cup Finals 2 times previously, way back in 96-97 when they got swept by Patrick Waugh, that fucking frog, as he was known around here, and the Colorado Avalanche, who were just a dynastic team at that point. And then it took almost another 30 years, thereabouts, to get back to the Stanley Cup Final. They got crushed like a grape by the Las Vegas Golden Knights last year, but we all know the story there. They didn't have a single guy that wasn't in some kind of need of an ambulance or some kind of drug that only Victor Conti could have conjured up in a lab somewhere in a strip mall in San Francisco. So much better situation this year, up 2-0 on the Edmonton Oilers. If you were betting the game, I was thinking about betting the sweep, Lubie. I know you don't think it's going to happen, and I probably would agree with you because we all had Panthers in 6. In fact, the universe has Panthers in 6. But I was thinking about taking the 11-1, Panthers in 4. And I would have put myself in a pretty fortunate situation because should they win this third, well, there's a lot of ifs. That big word at the top of the eye chart for every degenerate, IF, if this, if that. But if you are betting, BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA Finals, still ongoing. The pickup again, resume tomorrow night. And the Stanley Cup playoffs, now shifting the scene to Edmonton. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. I was tempted to bet the Panthers when they were down 1-0, Lubie, strictly based on your texts and the information that you were sending across. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino. It's never finished. I mean, the action at BetOnline, and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with over 150 slot games available to you. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, our good friends at the Believe Podcast Network, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. I wanted to dispel a rumor or something that has surfaced, and it's being investigated, that this show is being propelled by artificial intelligence, and that we're not actually Mike Lubie, Lubitz, and Jeff DeForest. Have you been hearing some of this speculation, Lubie, about this particular program, the morning briefing here on Caffeine TV? There is no form of intelligence that is being used in putting this program together, I can assure you. It is strictly being winged and right off the cuff here. But Cats 4, Edmonton 1 last night. The Barkov hit by Draisaitl. Ugliness. It got ugly as the Edmonton Oilers. You could see the frustration starting to manifest itself into a lot of cheap shots on the ice. It should make for real warfare when the scene shifts to Edmonton for when is the next game, by the way? Is it Thursday?
Thursday, yeah.
Because they got to schlep a long way through wilderness. Aroo, aroo. You're hearing jungle birds as you arrive at the arena and go to the middle of nowhere to play Game 3 of this series. So that'll be coming up on Thursday night, still a couple of nights away. Cats 4, Edmonton 1 last night. Only 19 shots on Sergei Bobrovsky, stopped 18 of them. That first one certainly was ugliness, and this seems to be one of his problems. There was no action in the defensive end for the Florida Panthers early in that game. It was about a 7-minute span there where Edmonton didn't have a shot. In fact, you're disputing the shot total that was posted in this game.
They've been, and I think in game 1 too, like the Panthers, the second and third period, the Panthers controlled the game for the most part. Game 1, like I know that first period it was a joke, but the rest of the game was very even. Yet for the Panthers to still be down 14 shots was fucking weird. The Panthers had way more shots than they were giving them credit for, and the Oilers were even into the late third, we're not doing anything. Like, it was one shot and out. So I was like, I don't know what they're doing when it comes to that stat. That's like the punch tracker where you watch a fight, you're like, that dude did not get punched 50 times. Like, what stat are they?
It kind of looked like an Adelaide Bird scorecard, didn't it?
It was really weird the way that they were officiating it weird, and I don't know. It just felt like they're trying to keep Edmonton in it, and then the Panthers like, no, I don't give a fuck what you do, and everything the Panthers did was legit. They're just physical, and the Oilers, and it's what we've been saying. They haven't seen this. The West is just very like every series the Panthers were playing was a team that has won or could win the cup. That was not the case out West, and it felt like. And that's what was weird, like watching what the Oilers were getting away with. I'm like, they're not going to be able to, it's funny, McDavid did a one-time early in the game last night where he did some skating bullshit, and then they leveled him. And like, they're not.
That was great. He looked like Steve Nash dribbling the ball in that Cochise move where he would circle the wagons for like 23 seconds, then hoist up some kind of crazy shot or just throw the ball away. It was great. All right. There was an issue, though, with regard to tickets for this game. And we've been schnorring on a couple of our other shows here, local shows here in South Florida, where we originate from, and seeing if we could cop some free tickets. And of course, it's sort of facetiously being done. But we come across a situation where a friend of ours is on the broadcast team for the Florida Panthers, and it's the regional cable that carries all of their home games, but they're shut out during the postseason. So this gentleman, his name's Craig Minervini, just happens to be going as a fan, and he's accorded the opportunity to buy tickets. I would imagine at face value, Lubie, the team offers its employees and people that are involved in the team's activities all year long an opportunity to buy some tickets at face value. Now, I didn't know what face value was for lower ball tickets for these games. I was assuming maybe for a playoff game, South Florida, it's not exactly a red-hot hockey market, but it's getting there. At least it has enough fans here. There's enough enthusiasm to fill the arena and create the illusion that this is somewhat of a hockey town right now, only because we're 2 games away from winning the Stanley Cup. I say we now because we've actually been following this story since its inception, going back to that 93-94 season. It was very exciting here in 96-97, and then dropped off into an abyss interest in the Florida Panthers because they were a lousy franchise. They were just immersed in mediocrity, mired in mediocrity, as we like to say, and it really wasn't that hot of a ticket. So anyway, right now, I mean, you can't get your hands on tickets for these games, and I'm thinking, face value for the Super Bowl games used to be a couple of hundred. Now they're in the thousands, even for a shitty seat. For this hockey, I didn't know that tickets for the lower bowl were going in excess. So on face value for $800+, is that true, Lubie, or is that an inflated price?
I see. I thought that was inflated, but if you do the math, I guess upper bowl it is. Look, it's the Stanley Cup Finals, so I guess 200 to 300. So I guess it could make sense that the lower bowl would be 600 to 800. That just feels like a lot for face, like what a ticket is before it gets on one of these secondary markets.
Yes.
I didn't see it being that.
Well, we had the moral dilemma, and I know where you stand on this, although I know what you would have done also, because you have less ethical value than I do when it comes to these sort of things, especially when money's involved. So the gentleman, in this case, Craig Minervini, outstanding broadcaster, who you've probably seen on some national telecasts as well. He's done a few things on a national stage. Used to be a wrestling announcer, actually, with like Mean Gene Okerlund.
Yes.
For the WWE. Does a terrific job. So he's not a guy, and one of the greatest guys. So you don't want to piss him off. You wouldn't want to look like a scumbag in front of him. And you're thinking, what level of scumbaggery would I stoop to? Because I know that Minnie, had I made the inquiry about getting the tickets, would have probably given me a chance to buy them ahead of maybe even some other people that might have been making that same inquiry. He put this up on his Facebook page and said, hey, direct message me, and I'll sell you the tickets at face value, and we'll make the connection. And sure enough, I mean, my one incentive would have been to buy the tickets. Now, is this out of bounds that you buy the tickets off a friend of yours at face value to come see a Stanley Cup Final game? And then when he sits down, because he was going to be at the game, he had 2 extra tickets that he had purchased for a family member who couldn't make the game at the last second. So would it have been out of bounds? Would it have been out of line? Would it have been just a pure scumbag move to then subsequently, after buying the tickets off a friend of yours who could have sold them to anybody that would have enjoyed the game, to stand outside the arena and scalp them? What do you make of that, Lubie? Would it be out of line? Are the tickets yours once you get them, or is there an implied assertion that if he sells you the tickets, you're going to the fucking game because you really want to go?
Oh, look, I mean, you buy something, it's yours. But to me, again, we talked about this. It depends on the conditions. Like if he openly tells you, "Look, I'm going to be at the game. I don't want to sit it."
I'm stuck with the tickets. Please buy them off me. That would be one thing.
If he's like, "Look, I'm going to the game. I don't want to sit next to randoms. The idea is to go with friends, but it's a fucking Stanley Cup, so I can't just give you tickets. I had to pay for these myself. This is what they're going for. Pay me." Then yeah, you sort of have to keep him and go. If he just sells you the fucking tickets, and if he's selling them for that high, that's sort of his bad. I mean, like if my problem is at $900 a fucking ticket, how high can you resell them for? Like,
yeah, is somebody going to pay you double? That's a good question.
The Rangers series, yeah, because you have a lot of New York fans that to go up to New York and watch a game at the Garden in the
good point
is really impossible. So if you can get away spending $1,500 on a ticket, it actually is worth it to you because you don't have to do the airfare, you don't have to find a hotel, you get to see your team in the Eastern Conference Finals, and
well, if you're reselling these tickets on the night of the game, though, Lubie, obviously the people are already here, whether they're Edmonton fans or not, and you would have to also assume that a lot of bandwagon jumping Panther fans maybe now got a notion, hey, well, we should go to the game. We're big Panther fans. And they put on the jersey they bought 35 years ago that doesn't fit anymore. Looks like they're one of those Jet fans wearing an Al Toon jersey to a game in the 2000s. And sure enough, I mean, you probably could have found somebody that would want to buy the tickets. I don't know how much money you could have made on them, but is it the ultimate degenerate scumbag move to have a friend of yours do you a favor and find you tickets that you could purchase at face fucking value on the day of the game and then turn around and sell them? That's what we were dealing with. A moral concept yesterday that we just couldn't get our arms wrapped around because you know me. I would have gone ahead and sold the tickets.
My problem is online. They were going for less.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
I asked Minnie about it. I actually called him and said, hey, I was thinking about it. I don't want to buy the tickets, but I was thinking about this. How would you have felt if some stranger showed up for those two seats? And Minnie would have said, hey, those aren't your seats because my friend DeForest and Lubie are going to be sitting there. And they said, no, we just bought them off those guys outside for $1,500 a pop. Scumbag move, no? Scumbag move all the way. Come on, Lubie. No, you can't. This is worse than the people trying to justify leaving Caitlin Clark off the Olympic team, which I read a lot of stuff. All of these people all of a sudden are such diehard experts on women's sports.
Yeah, isn't it funny?
And there are some people that I follow that I know we're fans of women's sports and we're advocates for the WNBA and all of this other bullshit that's going on right now where everybody's very sanctimoniously saying, oh, well, she doesn't deserve to be on the team. Fuck that. This is your meal ticket. How do you possibly leave Caitlin Clark off the Olympic team? Now, there's a fugazi thing in the works here, Lubie, and she's going to end up on the Olympic team because she was named or is about to be named as one of like a couple of alternates.
Which is the first alternate.
And there's a guard named Chelsea Gray who's on the team who has only played, I think, or hasn't played yet this year. The other person that's somewhat suspect on the team is Brittany Griner, who clearly you're not necessarily going to replace Brittany Griner with Caitlin Clark because vast differential in terms of what they can do and impact the team and size alone. Brittany Griner is still part of the worst basketball trade ever. You would probably immediately say, hey, it was Joe Barry Carroll and the Celtics get back the Chief and the rights to Kevin McHale. Worst basketball deal ever. You could make a case maybe for a few others, but that one takes the cake. I mean, it triggered a dynasty run for the Boston Celtics. And this was post their original dynasty run under the great Red Auerbach. But, trading Brittany Griner for the Merchant of Death. Yeah, my God. Now, it was a very unfortunate circumstance, and yet a lot of people would have the sentiment that, listen, Brittany Griner hated America before she ended up in a Russian gulag prison somewhere. And let's face it, it was as unjust as anything that could possibly happen, and you hate to see this happen to anybody, even if it was somebody whose sentiments you despise. But nonetheless, there's some sentiment that, hey, wait a minute, we got the All-American girl here, and then you got somebody on the team that had denounced America and tended to do so to her grave until she started bringing vape pipes through the airport there in Moscow, and it turned out not to be a very fortunate move for her. But at what expense to the country did her safe return come about? And who's better equipped to represent the sentiments and the emotions and the passion and the feeling of being an American? Is it Brittany Griner or a Caitlin Clark, who may as well be wearing an American flag when she steps out there on the court. But I think she somehow worms her way onto the team here, and I'm all for it because I can't believe they left this woman off. A team that's going to be representing the United States and women's basketball in the US of A on an international stage when the entire world is absorbed with this woman passes gas and people are trying to speculate what she had for lunch. That's how into Caitlin Clark the world is right now. Some, poor, a young girl that is barely scraping together enough ability to have something to eat is shooting baskets and wearing a Caitlin Clark jersey. When you see, even Discovery Channel show up to show you the impoverished conditions these people are trying to rise above and work their way out of, they want to see Caitlin Clark. They don't give a shit about Brittany Griner. They don't care about Chelsea Gray. So I think that's how it's going to come about, though. I think this Chelsea Gray is probably not going to be on the team. Brittany Griner, by the way, has only played one game in the WNBA this year. So I don't know. How deserving is she of being? And it's not like they're selecting a WNBA All-Star team either. So you would have to have some creative license and some discretion, you would think, in these matters when you have somebody of that level of popularity. That also, it's not like she sucks at basketball.
She's playing well. Her start, I think, is like the best start ever for like a player, and like she's putting up stats. Her team's just
it's not perfect, but yeah, I mean, she's shown some flaws. She's averaging like 32 turnovers a game, shooting a lot of bricks. I mean, it's really been brick and mortar for Caitlin Clark. But statistically, in the WNBA, she's up there. In the certainly in the top 50 percentile, and her popularity alone, and the fact that she is the face of women's basketball and maybe even women's sports at this point. Would make you think that it would be a good idea to include her on the Olympic team. There's no doubt about that. So it's going to happen. But, wow, a big debate going on about that still, and a lot of conversation. And I guess if all publicity is good publicity, then maybe it was a good move for the Olympic Committee to originally leave her out of the equation and find a way, just when you thought you were out, they bring you back in. Dan Hurley turns down $70 million to coach the Lakers. Some people are saying the offer was a little bit light, that if the Lakers... Go ahead.
What he's going to get supposedly somewhere between 50 and 60 million at UConn, where he'll be the patron saint there and can do no wrong probably for at least 5 years, if not a decade. The Laker job, it's 70 million is a ridiculous amount of money, but he's not guaranteed to be there for the life of the contract.
No.
And as things look, he probably won't be. If you look at the track record of every coach before him who had NBA experience, and he has zero NBA experience, like they were there a year or two. So if you're giving me, you're making me leave safety for whatever the hell that is, it's got to be a lot. Like it's got to be Spoelstra kind of money. Like Spoelstra's getting 15 to 20 million a year. Like it's got to be.
Tyronn Lue just got 14 million a year.
Yep, it's got to be something like that, and it wasn't. So that's what I didn't really like the numbers we were hearing. That's why the fact that he had a mullet over, he gave a drop dead date, and we were hearing like 15 mil a year. I'm like, okay, there's no way he's staying. I didn't realize it was like 10 to 11 a year. I mean, he'll eventually get up to that.
Is approachable, yeah, with everything that they can tie together for him in stores. And I don't know that his style works in the pros. I mean, you see the way he is. He's so animated and demonstrative, and he has a tendency to yell and scream. He's kind of like Woody Hayes with a round ball.
Yes.
So, I'm sure his players admire him or whatever, and he's done a very effective job of motivating these guys because by the time they get to the tournament the last 2 years, they're monsters. They're unapproachable. Everybody knows that the UConn's going to kind of cruise all the way to the title, which they've done 2 straight seasons to consecutive years as the champions. I don't know that any of that works in the pros. I mean, the first time that LeBron James puts his hand in his face and shoves him back like he was Eric Spoelstra in his early stages of coaching as a head coach, maybe Danny Hurley thinks it wasn't worth the money, dear. We're moving back to Connecticut. Pack up the van. Get out of here. I heard this is interesting about pro coaches. There's a guy in Edmonton whose name escapes me. It might be Perry or something like that. Anyway, if you look on the roster and there is no guy named Perry, you realize that we should be driven by artificial intelligence here on this show. But anyway, they were saying that he's been with the Oilers for like 13 years. And they've had 9 coaches during that period of time. And that's kind of where the Lakers are at right now. I mean, nobody there has had any great impact. So the fact that Danny Hurley turned the job down, no big surprise, especially if the money is relatively equivalent. And you had to wonder how impactful he was going to be coaching in the pros as a rookie head coach in the pros with zero experience dealing with these type of guys, as opposed to going back to college where there's still that dynamic. I don't know. Has that changed where the players are making more money than the coaches in some situations?
The NIL is good, but it ain't that. These guys are making millions. I mean, because he came from somewhere else to go to UConn. So he's making millions. They're all making more than the players, and that's why that dynamic still holds true. The coach and the players, there is a clear delineation. Where in the pros, there's not. I mean, the players clearly have more power. It's not even a joke. Because every year like the Cavs were good this year, went to the playoffs and won a playoff series for the first time since LeBron. Like before LeBron and since LeBron, they hadn't won a playoff series in forever, and they fired Bickerstaff. And a lot has to do with Mitchell wants to leave, so they're assuming it's because of Bickerstaff. Even though Bickerstaff did a good job, like the pros in the college, if you do a good job in college, you're not going anywhere. Like.
That's it. Yeah, no, he's in pretty good situation there. Let's face it. They had to make all kinds of, I would imagine, concessions to whatever it was that he felt he was missing, which I don't know that it was much when he turned down the Kentucky job. Have you heard anything? Has there been any implication that there'll be an investigation into Game 1 and whether or not Jason Kidd had money getting 7.5 points with the Dallas Mavericks when he decided not to foul with 25 seconds to go? And faint little chance of winning the game, but whatever chance he had rested in the idea that he would send the Celtics to the line where they would hoist a series of bricks while his team would suddenly find the range for three-point land in the last 20 seconds of the game. And there was the outside remote possibility that they could somehow push this game maybe even into overtime. And instead, with his team trailing by 7, still somewhat mathematically within range, not impossible to conjure up. Reggie Miller, 14 points, in 3 seconds he had? That one, I mean, it's been done. How does he let them play Salugi the entire time, as if they were keeping like a wool cap away from some little girl in the middle of wintertime as you were playing around and just teasing your sister? Right? Remember that game, right? You would have 2 tall guys. You would keep throwing a hat just as the girl was about to get it. How does he allow that to go on without any kind of investigation being launched by the NBA offices that perhaps, as we've seen, I mean, holy John Day Porter, what are we talking about here, Jason? You got to send somebody to the stripe in that spot. It didn't cost them the game necessarily, but it sure did protect the point spread. Even if you had it at 7, you were getting a push there. So I really have to question that. Only Shohei, maybe he was betting Ohtani's money, and he just didn't want anybody to find out. So he went ahead and tanked that last 25 seconds. U.S. Open, it's on the way this week in golf, Lubie. Here's my choice in the golf pool I'm in, and one big one. And I didn't notice Scotty Scheffler on any of the lists. Is he a cinch to win the U.S. Open this year? Does he just go back? They rarely go back-to-back on a PGA Tour, so we just won last week. I consider that somewhat of a bad omen, but who's playing better than this guy with 5 tournament wins? And the other odd thing about Scotty Scheffler, I didn't realize this, he had never won a tournament after the month of May. So he usually, I mean, with the amount of wins as he's accumulated and the number 1 golfer in the world, how is it possible that he would go 7 months of the year? I guess, I don't know, do you count December as a month of golf? They kind of shut it down at the end of October, I guess, in terms of actual events. And then they used to have all of that other stuff, all this bullshit for TV. What happened to the Skins game, Lubie? Did people stop enjoying that? It seemed like it was a good concept, didn't it? Everybody was, and when you would go out and golf, everybody wanted to go, hey, let's play the Skins game. It's like, fuck you, let's just play. But anyway, here's my choice in one of the lists that I have to choose one player from. It's like 7 lists of 10 guys. You have a team of 7. It's sort of a fantasy thing, only with money involved, and low cumulative score wins the thing. Would you take DeChambeau at this point or Rory McIlroy in the U.S. Open? DeChambeau or Rory McIlroy? Are you a believer now that Bryson DeChambeau, I mean, very impressive
in these moments, yeah,
in the Masters. The guy looked like he was going to win the thing. Would you take DeChambeau? Oh, that was a PGA tournament that we're talking about. And wow, what a run he made. He looked fantastic. He looked like the DeChambeau of old. Whereas a lot of these guys have become irrelevant once they got to the Live Tour. Anybody talk about Phil anymore? No. He was finished anyway. But John Rahm, he's completely disappeared from the equation and would be a very distant consideration to win anything at this stage. Took him 1 year on the Live Tour. What happened? Did he get weighed down by that paycheck that he's making? That was the theory that was out there about Sergei Bobrovsky in his first year when he was horrible with the Florida Panthers. But we find ourselves 2 games away from maybe winning the Stanley Cup here in South Florida. So that's certainly good news. And we'll see what happens as we have to wait now until Thursday night for Game 3 of this series to unfold. All right, we're going to get out of here. Thanks so much for being with us. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to today's edition, a very celebrated edition. Not artificial intelligence, Lubie, but the real thing of the Morning Briefing.